Hey, we are back. We are the Wrestling Boys. I am Logan.
I'm Goose.
And we are here to give our review of both Raw 30
Yep.
and the Royal Rumble.
Yep. But first, let's talk about something we're a little late with, and that is the passing of
Jay Briscoe.
Jay Briscoe, also known as Jamin Pugh. And I remember when you told me about it last week that he had perished in a car crash. I was just
Shocked.
I was shocked. I was kind of taken aback. Because this is a member of probably one of the best tag teams in wrestling. They've been together for at least a couple decades.
I think they've been with Ring of Honor, I think, since the company begun back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And I remember when we, just a few years ago, when we had another studio, we were talking about who is the best tag team around, and it was like our argument was there are so many of them that it's kind of hard to pick one
narrow it down.
Back then, you had
you had the New Day, the Revival, the War Raiders, the Briscoes,
Evo and Sonata, the Bucks. I mean, you had so many great tag teams at that time. Even like the Fashion Police were like
were an underrated one, even though they were mostly a comedy
team. But it was like it was just kind of devastating to see. Just to see that he'd passed away
in such tragic circumstances, because I think they were on the way back from their daughter's cheerleading practice, and I think hit by a drunk driver. Or?
I think so. Yeah. Apparently, I guess she had gone into his lane and hit him head on, and I mean, it's just.
And yes, both Jay and his wife died in the accident, but luckily their daughter has survived and is on the recovery. So,
but it's just it's just one of those things where it's like you hear the news of a wrestler passing away, and of course, what's the most common thing we think of when a wrestler passes away? It's like usually, drugs or usually they're older. It's an older wrestler, what do you call it? A classic veteran Hall of Famer that passes away, but nothing like something like this where
they were still in their prime.
I mean, it just brings back memories of Brody Lee, who was again on top of his game, but I mean, and I think the sad part is I think it's because Ring of Honor was one of those. I don't want to say B companies. I mean, it was a lot of great wrestlers. A lot of great companies. A lot of great wrestlers came out of that company.
I wouldn't say they're a B company, but they're not like. They were a big company, but they never were as popular. I think just because they didn't have the TV presence that companies like WWE, AEW, or even Impact had. So I'd say Ring of Honor was, I guess, how would you describe it? Like one step below the Major League, I guess.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the Briscoes never wavered in leaving Ring of Honor. They had always stayed there. I think at one point they were their tag champs for a long time.
I'm not sure
multiple
how long.
times. It's just and if you've ever seen them, I think we had a chance to see them at least 2 or 3 times, and they were just amazing. They put a lot of other tag teams to shame and how good they were, and their personas in the ring. Which brings up something else, because somebody had asked me about all the stuff that apparently I guess Jay Briscoe was, I guess, kind of like a guy on Twitter who basically spoke his mind and people didn't like it. And
apparently like a long time ago, something like 10 years ago, he had made this homophobic remark, and even though he had apologized for it later on after his passing, people on Twitter were like, believe people are saying rest in power about a homophobic white wrestler. Even though
Which-
people in the know, which I'm sure 99% of the people who are whining about using rest in power about a white guy had no clue who Jay Briscoe was.
Yeah.
But
The interesting part was Jay Briscoe wasn't the white guy.
mhm.
Apparently he
they
was
actually have Native American.
Native American.
heritage.
He had Native American bloodline in him, and so he could be considered a person of color.
Mhm.
And so, which kind of fits with the rest in power
Mhm.
kind of thing. But here it is. It's like you know, to, and I remember Simon Miller was talking about this in his tribute last week about it, and he was like, he says, look, he's older now, he's moved on, he's apologized for it. We need to allow forgiveness and redemption in people. We can't allow this kind of stuff to just fester.
Brand them for life.
Brand them for life. I mean, especially if it's something that was tweeted 10 years ago. I mean, I'm sure if any of you out there can pull up your old tweets from 10 years ago, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Oh, people, and I think what else disgusts me is the fact that by people saying rest in power, and there are those who came on Twitter and say that you can't say that, you can only say that to a black guy. And it's like, really? Man,
at this time, man just passed
Passed.
the most tragic of circumstances, and this is what you decide to
yeah,
go on about.
you're going to make it a political thing now? A man just died. And you're going to make this a political thing? Yeah, rest in power. I hope he does rest in power. I hope
Just to spite all the people that
yeah.
were getting their panties in a bunch over it.
But I don't know. The big question is like, where are the Briscoes going to go from here? What is it, Mark?
Mark Briscoe?
Mark Briscoe. Where's he going to go from here? Is he going to team up with, like Jay Lethal? They had a big tag match to commemorate
Commemorate Jay.
Jay. And so, is he going to team up with someone, or is he going to start a solo career, or what's he going to do? It's kind of, it's almost like, the best way I can equate it is like if Jay Uso died,
It's
or
like, what does Jimmy do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because these people have been inseparable their entire careers.
entire careers.
So I'm sure he could go on to a singles career. I
Yeah.
know Jay had a singles career, so I don't see why Mark couldn't, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he did form another tag team with Jay Lethal, as you said, or I guess whatever he decides to do, we'll just
Yeah.
have to wait and see.
If you have a chance to see any of the Briscoes matches, I think the best place you can probably find them is on Daily Motion.
I think so. It's kind of hard to find, as we said, Ring of Honor
Yeah.
stuff, but I think they had their tribute show still up on YouTube, which
Yeah.
I think was like career highlights. And I'm sure if you look hard enough, you can find stuff on YouTube or Daily Motion. Like I really wanted to find their series they had with the Revival this past year, and I'm having a hard time finding it.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where we just looking back and you're realizing that the wrestling world lost a great man, someone. Again, I remember Simon Miller was saying that Jay Briscoe was so personable and would joke around, and when Simon Miller was this, and if you know who Simon Miller is, just go to What Culture Wrestling.
He does all the ups and downs.
The bald guy.
Yeah.
He's the one that slaps the top of his head. But he was when Simon Miller was talking about how he just broke into the wrestling thing and he didn't know anything about it. He knew a little bit about it, and he was sitting there interviewing the Briscoes, and they were just joking with him and playing games and tricks on him and stuff like that, and just making him a part of the wrestling world. And Simon Miller was like, you really appreciate someone who is so accepting to be able to do that. Even Simon Miller was like, we're not going to talk about the Twitter stuff because it's just
Shameful.
It's just shameful because he was like, you got to allow somebody to be able to
Just have
to
some
grow.
respect.
have some. So yeah, that's all we ask.
Have some compassion. Have some respect. But then again, we're talking about Twitter, and
Twitter is
sadly, that's a foreign concept to most on there.
yeah, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Super Bowl 4.